Things are gonna get crazy!
Most everyone's mad
Hey, ladies and bees and gentlemen, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. And oh my goodness, look at this. JF already coming in, being a new fish. Not only that, but I even just see right here J Monty also being a new fish. Holy crap, what a way to start. I got a feeling that some of you might have missed me, but don't worry folks, I missed you all as well. I know it's been a little bit of a while since the last episode, considering that last week I did take a little bit of a break, mainly because of how, well, in terms of animation news, it's been a little bit dry, but then again, you could argue that, well, in the previous week we just had, well, that's been dry as well. Well, that's pretty much the main point of this whole episode, is that not only are we going to be talking about the recent things that has been going on in animation, but also what has happened in the week before. And I do understand that when it comes to discussing about news, nowadays, it's been a very frightening subject, especially nowadays when we would be hearing about what's been going on in America and how Trump and Elon Musk are turning the US into a third world country at this point with the devastation that they have been causing. I mean, no joke. Here in Canada, ever since this weekend, the only thing, or at least the grand majority of what has been talked about, has been nothing but the tariffs and how we as Canadians should be buying a lot more locally, just buying stuff that are made exclusively in Canada. So I understand that the news has been absolutely terrifying, but don't worry, in here, we're gonna make it a fun thing, especially when a lot of it is in relation to animation and movie news and all that kind of stuff. Trust me, we will be having some interesting, but also a lot of fun-filled and exciting discussions. So with that said, now I would like to go on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, are you ready for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast? So, who is ready? Let me see. All right, let's see now. Are there some people ready? Oh, I do see. Okay. I see that you people are prepared. People are set. All right. So, oh, and I even see Meta Ralph being a new fish here. Well, thank you so much. All right. So, with that said, it is now time that we shall go and get things started. And with our first story that we have, we're going to go and ease onto things, in which we will be talking about a new teaser trailer that came out. And this is something that a buddy of mine has actually presented to me and actually discussed about, hey, look, remember when you reviewed this movie? Well, now there's going to be a sequel that will be coming out. And I will admit, I was aware that apparently that there might be a sequel that's going to be coming out soon, but seeing it, though, like now actually it's going to be coming to life, that's another thing. And so, with that said, let us now go and start things off by looking at a familiar face who's going to be coming back, as we will be watching the teaser trailer for Chickenhare and the Secret of the Groundhog. Whoops, time out. I think sound would be important, so let's redo that.
How much do you know about the groundhog with the backward-facing face?
I don't know, but are you interested in a Viking cruise? Okay, this is not well timed.
How much do you know about the groundhog with the backward-facing face?
And that is Chickenhare and the Secret of the Groundhog, to which the movie is going to be coming out sometime in 2025. There is no confirmation as to when specifically it shall be coming out, but according to my friend who presented me this teaser trailer, he also told me that there's apparently this rumor that's going on that the premiere might actually be held at this year's Annecy International Animation Film Festival. Now, rather if that's going to actually happen, that I don't really know, but I guess it's going to be something that we will have to wait and see if that will be the case. But what we do know, at least with this teaser trailer, nWave is promising that it will be sometime in 2025 that the movie shall be released. So somewhere this year, we're going to be getting this. Now, I actually recall it was a little bit of a while ago, I would say a year and a half ago, I remember watching the first movie of Chickenhare, and that was one that I gotta say I have very strong mixed feelings about. And when I say strong mixed feelings, it's one of those cases where I feel like the movie simultaneously has some amazingly good things about it, but at the same time has things that are just absolutely garbage. Like the script that they used, it really was awful. Like it was the kind that you would expect from a lazily crafted kids movie where the jokes suck, the characters are flat, some of the personalities are unpleasant, the story is weak and predictable. It was just not really good all around. So in terms of the story and its characters, not great. But then there are some things that kind of blew my mind that it is like way better than expected. Like some of the good traits about it, it's like, oh my God, they put in a lot more work than debatably than they should. Like number one, the animation was absolutely spectacular. I would even say it's even better than some of the animation that we have seen from mainstream studios. Like, I gotta say, I was very much impressed by what the team at nWave Studios has actually done with it. So they've already proven that they have a very strong animation team, and Chickenhare definitely is a great example of that. But then at the same time, there are some scenes as well that they really do stand out in terms of their creativity. And honestly, my favorite moment from the Chickenhare movie were the pigs, where they were pretty much this combination of like this little square building blocks where they would form together and like just turn, like create whatever. They're kind of like a little combination of a pig and a Lego brick. And those moments were absolutely fun to see, like how they would like form together to create like these different like structures. So that was definitely fun. And also I'll even add that some of the voice acting is also pretty good. So yeah, this is why I wanted to say that the first Chickenhare movie is a combination of things that are awesome, but also things that are terrible at the same time, which pretty much results in some mixed aspects in it under one umbrella, which is that movie. But I will say that when it comes to the sequel, I have heard before that apparently, like I said before, I have heard that nWave was considering to make a sequel to Chickenhare. That, it's been a few years that they were thinking about maybe they'll go and actually make a follow-up to Chickenhare. Maybe they would go and actually continue the adventures with these characters. And I've heard about it, and honestly, I didn't really think much of it. It's like, okay, it's something that I've learned while I was working on the first movie, and, okay, I guess we'll see what happens, but whatever. It's never necessarily something in terms of my top priority to consider that one day I might have to go and see Chickenhare again. But then they officially came out with this teaser trailer. And I gotta say, in terms of what they have presented, a lot of it feels like the same thing as before, like both some of the positive aspects but also some of the negative aspects. And I might as well get into the positive ones. Like, I will admit that so far, the animation it still looks spectacular. It is still a very impressive looking movie. Like, the animation is still top notch. The characters still look fantastic. And like, even when they got like the new additions, where apparently now we have this chicken girl, which honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe she would become the new love interest for Chickenhare, because I mean, he is part chicken after all. So I'm sure there's going to be a certain point when nWave is going to decide, all right, let's go and give Chickenhare a girlfriend and see what happens. So of course they would do that. And then of course you got the so far, who could possibly be the villain or maybe the anti-hero. We got this Lynx character. And then, well, of course, we have the pigs coming back, of course. The pigs making their great comeback after the first movie. So the promise that they would return is honestly a great sight to see. And on top of that, we even got a great example of even more ways that they can be creative. Like, they disguise themselves as a building, and then they turned themselves into a giant wheel. And then there was even at one point where it suddenly becomes a little bit like a video game with Chickenhare and the turtle, where like they got to go and dodge obstacles. Like, that I will admit that in this trailer, that was actually a lot of fun to watch. So if there is one thing that I really want to give credit to this teaser trailer, is that it knows what people love from the first movie and reintroduce those aspects onto the sequel so that it can make a good first impression. However, at the same time, there are moments that I do get the feeling that we may end up seeing some of the bad parts as well. Like, the characters' personalities, they feel a lot of the same that honestly I did not necessarily care for, including that pessimistic turtle. Like, he was kind of annoying in the first movie. And also the kind of humor that they want to go and introduce as well, especially when the whole, like, technically what is considered to be the big treasure that I guess eventually we will go and eventually see, or that the characters will ultimately meet, is apparently this groundhog who has a backward facing face. And apparently that seems to be the whole gag with him. So honestly, I will say that in terms of the humor and with the characters themselves, honestly, doesn't seem that interesting. Like, if anything, maybe the Lynx character, I'd be curious to see how she would be, and if maybe she would be more, she would be a more interesting and a more developed character than the recurring ones. And oh my God, I actually just realized that technically, if you actually see here, I don't know if that was just me, or did she lose her arm? Okay, no, maybe not. It's just, okay, so I was thinking, like, from that previous shot, it made it look like over here, it was like, oh my God, did she actually, did she lose her arm? No, it's just that she has a lot of gadgets with her. Okay, so she's like more of a gadget heavy type character. So at the most, maybe I'd be curious to see like how this character in particular would be compared to the others, like with Chickenhare and the gang. But other than that, though, I think the main selling point, or at least what they are presenting that has impressed me, is in regards to the animation and, of course, bringing back the pigs. So if there is one thing that I would like to see more of from this Chickenhare sequel, is that, of course, I would love to see if they can develop a better story and maybe actually, actually strengthen up their characters, like retool them in order to be more engaging, to give them more depth, to make them more likable. But at the same time, I would like to also see some new creative stuff that they could go and think of, rather it be in terms of the obstacles or maybe in terms of the enemies as well, that they could go and find a way to actually present more of their creativity the same way that they have presented it with the pigs. But are they actually going to do so? I guess ultimately we will have to wait and see when Chickenhare and the Secret of the Groundhog will be coming out sometime later this year. And I guess later this year, we will know more info as to when it shall be coming out specifically. All right, so with that said, now it's time I like to go into the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about the teaser trailer of Chickenhare and the Secret of the Groundhog? Were you guys impressed by it? Do you guys need to see a little bit more of it to know if you want to actually go and see it? And if you have actually checked out the first Chickenhare movie, I would like to know what you all think. And on top of that, might as well go into, I might as well go and actually create a poll. And I want to go and ask you all, would you watch the sequel to Chickenhare? So I'll go and write down yes and then no, and we'll see what the results are soon. But first and foremost, let's see what the chat wall has to say. All right, let's see here. I'm not gonna lie, I have never seen the first Chickenhare. In fact, I forgot it was a movie that even existed. And this trailer just looks meh. The animation looks good and does seem pretty creative, but the characters don't seem that interesting. So overall, this might be a pass. But on the plus side, this might be slightly better than the last Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, you know, the funny thing is that I remember back in my review, that's the one thing I did say that this movie was almost, it kind of felt like it was Indiana Jones meets Zootopia. And that would be at best, but unfortunately, it didn't make it up to that quality. Let's see, what else do we have here? I have seen the first Chickenhare because, I mean, who has? I haven't seen the first Chickenhare because, I mean, who has? But I could say this trailer looks like a sequel to Chickenhare. I guess the animation looks nice, particularly with the little piggy cubes, but at the same time, nothing is really grabbing me. Nothing about the story or characters are enticing me. It all feels so blasé, so needless to say, I'm not going to give it a watch, but I have a question about the links, and that is, why did I think she was Jen from Kung Fu Panda 4 at first? I mean, that is kind of a good point, actually. Like, if we go back to the links, like, you know what could be the thing? She does share a bit of a similar color scheme, and maybe the silhouette kind of looks a bit the same as well. And I just want to go and double check something. I just want to also hear a bit of her voice.
Frolic is back!
Okay, honestly, I was thinking, like, does she also sound like Awkwafina? But no, I guess not. You know, I guess maybe at the most, maybe her attitude can share some similarities with Zhen from Kung Fu Panda 4. But I do get I do understand, like, a bit of the parallels. Not entirely, but I could see some of the comparisons there. Let's see what else we have here. Let's see. I didn't see the first Chickenhare movie, and this did not convince me to see it. The animation looks passable, I guess, but nothing that spectacular. I feel like this movie brings back new flavor of Diet DreamWorks, only filtered through the bad guys rather than Shrek. Yeah, okay, I do get what you mean. Although, like, I do give more credit to the animation. It definitely looks very nice, at least in my opinion. Let's see what other comments that we have here. And are the polls actually done? Oh, okay. Wow. It literally just finished, as I mentioned. Yes. Well, apparently, this is not good news for Chickenhare because, unfortunately, it looks like the majority of you are not that interested in checking out the movie, considering that 89% of you, with the exception of a very few voters, you have said, no, you ain't going to be checking it out. So, unfortunately, the sequel, or at least the teaser trailer, did not really do its job to convince you to check it out. All right, I do see we have more comments here, so let me see now. Never see the first movie, but this trailer makes me interested in this franchise. Disney has left a bad taste in my mouth these recent years, so I hope this movie can make up for what Disney kinda ruined. At least this is better than Drake's loss when Kendrick Lamar swept the Grammys. If you're thinking that this could be a better alternative to Disney, nah, not really. I wouldn't, at least for me, I wouldn't recommend it. Not like, if you want to look for one, Chickenhare ain't it, really. Anyways, well, I'll even state for myself, I'm a little bit on the same page, although not entirely. I haven't seen the first film, so I'm not quick to judge, but I'll admit I did enjoy the trailer. It looked like a lot of fun, especially with those pigs, bricklings. Really were enjoyable to see them shape themselves around. I will state there is a sense of caution to believe if this film will be good or not, but hopefully they better make good with their concepts. I mean, hopefully, maybe, we'll see. Let's see what other comments are there. I think I'll read two more and then we're going to move on to our first break. I will say, I'm quite intrigued in this film. I have not seen the first film aside from the classic review you did back in 2023, where you said you're mixed about it. I might give the first film a chance because the idea and animation is slowly starting to grow on me. I don't know what to expect, but I think I might get more enjoyment out of it than you. As for the sequel, we'll have to wait and see with how it turns out when it came out. I will confess that Link's character looked pretty hot. Oh, yeah, I can totally imagine, because the funny thing about Chickenhare is that even though I'm not really a fan of it, there is a little bit of a niche fan base who did actually like Chickenhare. And that is especially the case with another character that they have, which is the Skunk Girl. They do have like this adventurous skunk girl that teams up with Chickenhare and the turtle. But I just gotta say that she also has a weapon that is known for skunks, or that is known with skunks, and it attracts a certain crowd that is into that. I'm just saying. And that's also one of the things that I gotta say, that if you're looking for a Disney alternative, I don't know if that ain't it, because the Skunk Girl's weapon is going to be the kind that will show you, okay, maybe never mind. Disney, I think it's better to stick with Disney than to face another weapon that the Skunk Girl would go and bring out. I'm just saying, you could probably guess on what that is. Let's see now. One more comment to go and read here. Let's see now. Who I have not read. Okay, I'll go with this one. From what I remember from your review of the first film, it was a mediocre as a meal with no salt. It may look nice, but it's bland, forgettable troll. My expectations are low, but I could be wrong. My expectations were low on Hotel Transylvania, and I like that flick, but I am unconvinced, and my expectations are still low. Well, I mean, the best thing you can do is just experience it for yourself and see how it is. And even though the sequel, or at least the teaser trailer, may not have convinced you, but maybe we could be proven wrong that maybe the second round of Chickenhare might turn out to be better than what we expect when it will come out in 2025. At least somewhere in 2025, maybe late, maybe earlier, we'll see. All right, so now with that done, it is now time we're going to go on to our first break. And when we do come back, we're going to go and catch up on some movie news and some animation news, especially when it comes to the announcement for the biggest award show, at least in terms of movies. So yes, folks, we are going to be checking out the nominations when we come back. All right, welcome back. Now, I know that it's been a little while since this has been announced, but the main reason why I want to go and talk about it is that, well, last week I didn't get a chance to do so because, well, I took that break. But now it is the moment that we can really go into this discussion, and I will say that it did pay off a little bit in terms of waiting until there has been more news related to this, because oh boy, in terms of some of the movies here, there's been a lot of madness going on. But of course, here at AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, we will primarily be focusing on the animation categories. So with that said, let us go ahead and check out the announcements of the Oscar nominations. Yes, on January, or at least during the second half of January, the Academy has officially announced all the nominations for the 97th Annual Academy Awards. And so far, it is looking like it is going to be quite an intense competition this year, especially with certain movies where they have managed to collect a whole bunch of nominations on their own. And that is especially the case with Emilia Perez, in which it managed to get more nominations than any other movie this year, with a grand total of 13. And yes, by the way, this does break the record for a movie that is not primarily in English or a non-English language film receiving the most nominations at the Oscars. So yes, Emilia Perez has managed to get that title. How people may react, well, that'll be a little bit of a discussion for later. But Emilia Perez isn't the only tough competitor. Now, if I go and switch up here to the Wikipedia link for this year's Academy Awards, if we look at the movies that received multiple nominations, of course, we got Emilia Perez that managed to get 13, which is then followed by The Brutalist and Wicked that managed to get a total of 10 each. Then after that, we also got A Complete Unknown and Conclave, which managed to get 8 nominations. And then we also got Anora that got a total of 6. Then we have Dune Part 2 and The Substance receiving 5. And Nosferatu receiving 4 nominations. Now, I could go on, but then again, we would be here forever. Now, what I want to go and primarily focus, like I said before, is in regards to the animation categories, and that's what I want to go and highlight and primarily discuss about. So the first thing we're going to go and look into is going to be the Best Visual Effects category, considering that, well, that one, even though these aren't animated movies nominated, they do have artists and animators who have worked on that. So in that regards, the nominees for this year's Best Visual Effects are Alien Romulus, Better Man, Dune Part 2, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and Wicked. Now let's go and move up to Best Animated Short. And the nominees for those are Beautiful Men, In the Shadow of the Cypress, I think that's how you pronounce it, Magic Candies, Wander to Wonder, and Yuck. And then finally, or actually before we go into that big one, I might as well go and highlight also what is nominated for Best Picture. And the nominees for those are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and Wicked. But that's not the main one that you all want to know. The main one, of course, oh, and thank you, TK, for being another new fish for this episode. What I want to focus, of course, is Best Animated Feature. And the nominees are Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. Now, before we go into the animation categories, I want to quickly go and comment in regards to the Best Picture nominations, especially the ones that have received the biggest nominations here. Like, of course, as I mentioned before, there will be some major competition, especially in regards to films such as Wicked, The Brutalist, Conclave, maybe A Complete Unknown, and a few others as well. But then there is also Emilia Perez. Now, I just want to go and make this statement right now. I personally have not yet seen Emilia Perez, so I personally cannot comment on the movie itself. but I am fully aware of all the controversies that has been going on with Emilia Perez. And oh my God, it has increasingly become this massive mess in which with Emilia Perez, there's already a lot of people who are blasting it and already like really hating it down to the point that I don't know if it's controversial to say, but if you go onto like, here, I might as well go and actually show you here. If you go on Rotten Tomatoes, some could say that it did get review bombed, or at least in terms of the audience score. So let me just show you here. Like when you go to the Rotten Tomatoes page of Emilia Perez, you'll see that critics liked it, and it managed to get 73% of critics who actually were positive towards it. But then you see the audience score, and it has reached 18%. Hey, boy, like not even Disney projects or Star Wars related projects would get reviewed bombs so bad. And I mean, yes, I do understand, like, audience scores don't really matter all that much. I do get it, but this is to just go and say that the people who did not like Emilia Perez, they have been extremely vocal, especially not just criticizing how the movie itself is not really good, but they're also saying how it is a bad representation of Mexico City and trans people. The story itself is not all that great. And even the musical numbers have they've often been compared to Joker Part 2. Like, they've been that bad. Now, keep in mind, this is just what people have been saying. This is not my opinion on it. Again, I haven't seen it, so I cannot necessarily say. Oh, and then just recently, there's been the new controversy in which a lot of people have said before that who was technically the big front runner for Best Actress, the star of Emilia Perez, Carla Sofia Garzón. Apparently, there have been some old tweets that have been resurfaced, and a lot of them are just very bigoted and spreaded a lot of delusional conspiracy theories, like a bunch of anti-vax stuff, a bunch of racist stuff, and a lot of embarrassing things that Carla has said in the past. And like, they've been so bad down to the point where she had to go and completely deactivate her Twitter account. So yeah, right now the whole thing with Emilia Perez, it's just been a massive mess. And if that's going to affect its chances at the Oscars, I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But honestly, considering the amount of wins that it did receive at the Golden Globes, I wouldn't be surprised if Emilia Perez does come out as a winner and people still decided to go and move forward to go and give Emilia Perez a whole bunch of different wins. So I guess we're going to wait and see when that happens next month, although I can imagine that's going to be quite a mess. But we're not here to go and talk about Emilia Perez. We're here to mainly look into the animation categories and very specifically for Best Animated Feature. And I just gotta say, I think I managed to go and make my prediction correct. Like back in December when I was doing my predictions on what would ultimately be nominated, I think I listed every single one of them correctly. Like I managed to go and guess Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit: Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. Managed to nail them all down. But also, I almost forgot, by the way, for the first time in a few years, there are a couple of animated features that actually received multiple nominations. The first of which is actually Flow, in which not only is it nominated for Best Animated Feature, but it is also nominated for Best International Feature, alongside Emilia Perez, The Girl with the Needle, I'm Still Here, and The Seed of the Sacred Fig. But then, at the same time, you got The Wild Robot, which also got 3 3 nominations, in which it is nominated for Best Original Score, alongside The Brutalist, Conclave, Emilia Perez, and Wicked, and Best Sound, in which it is nominated alongside A Complete Unknown, Dune Part 2, Emilia Perez, and Wicked. And no, unfortunately, it did not receive the nomination for Best Original Song. In that regards, we have to go and make room for 2 of the Emilia Perez songs. And from my guess, hopefully, none of them are the infamous one that's been spreading across social media. The one where somehow the songwriter decided, you know what? It would be a great idea to write a song about people who are transitioning with their genders. So let's go and write man to woman, from penis to vagina. There we go. Oscar, please. Or at least, apparently the lyricist is nominated twice and like one of the jobs he had to do, or what they had to do, was actually that. You can look it up. That actually is a real lyric from one of the songs in Emilia Perez. But anyways, back to what I was talking about. Unfortunately, I hate to be pessimistic, but I don't think I could see those 2 movies winning anything outside of Best Animated Feature. I mean, it is very nice that The Wild Robot and Flow were able to get multiple nominations, in which I did see in the chat wall, someone did mention that this has been the first time since, Encanto, that there has been an animated feature that was nominated for multiple Oscars, or, it got more than one nomination. So, in that regard, it's nice that they got the nominations, but I highly doubt that they would go and win. With Best International Feature, it would be nice to see Flow getting the win for that. But considering that it is also nominated alongside a couple of movies that do have Best Picture, like Emilia Perez and I'm Still Here, I think the chances are unfortunately pretty weak for Flow. And even for The Wild Robot, so far I haven't been seeing it actually winning any of the other categories. I haven't seen it be a big winner for Best Original Score, and I highly doubt it would go and win Best Sound, especially if it's up against some major competitors. I would say A Complete Unknown seems like a strong one that could completely get it, or even A Complete Unknown. Or did I say A Complete Unknown twice? I meant A Complete Unknown and Dune Part 2. So I could see those 2 probably getting the win, but not The Wild Robot. So this ultimately leaves the Best Animated Feature category with Flow, Inside Out 2, Memoir of a Snail, Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, and The Wild Robot. And I still stand that ever since the Golden Globe, with that sudden upset with Flow actually winning, I think it's going to be tough to really figure out who's going to get the win. Because, yes, it is true that when it comes to The Wild Robot, it is still considered a very strong competitor. It was one of the highest rated movies of 2024, the highest rated animated feature, with in which it is almost unanimous with all critics, including myself, that it is a wonderful feature and one of the best animated movies of that particular year. So it would make sense that we would see it as a very strong competitor at the Oscars as well. But let's not go and rule out Flow, which so far during this award season at this point, it has been gathering a lot of wins for itself. And I mean that it has been able to go and beat out the other animated films, especially The Wild Robot, in order to get the win for Best Animated Feature. And over time, I have been seeing more and more, even with people who don't regularly talk about animation, that they would also talk about Flow and also talk about how much they love it. And I don't blame them. It is a beautiful animated feature. So in that regard, it definitely will be a very tough call to see who would ultimately go and get the win. And let's not go and immediately rule out some of the others as well. I'll even add that Inside Out 2 still may have a strong chance, because you never know if Inside Out 2 will suddenly just sweep in and actually go and grab that win. Because yes, we know that so far it looks like with the Golden Globes, they already gave it to Flo, and with the upcoming Annies, they're gonna go and give it to most likely The Wild Robot. But when it comes to the Oscars, on the other hand, they can go a little bit rogue and go outside of what people would go and talk about. So from there, they could suddenly go and give that unexpected win to Inside Out 2. There is still that massive possibility right there. So that's why I just want to go and emphasize that we shouldn't go and immediately rule out Inside Out 2. Like, a lot of people would say that it's either Wild Robot or Flo, but I disagree. I think Inside Out 2 still has a pretty strong chance. Now, if it were up to me, honestly, if I would have a dream moment to see what would happen at the Oscars, honestly, I want none of those to win. I don't want Inside Out 2, I don't want The Wild Robot, and I don't want Flo. For me, I'm going all in, and I would love to see Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Foul, get the win. Maybe I'm the odd man out. Maybe I'm the one with the unpopular voice in this. But honestly, Wallace and Gromit is my favorite animated feature among the 5 over here. And I would just love it to see that very unexpected win that people would go and decide, you know what? Let's go and give it to Vengeance Most Foul, because why the fridge not? That's just for me, honestly. I would love to see that upset occur. But realistically, however, it looks like it's going to be towards possibly the other 3. It might be Flo, it might be The Wild Robot, or it might even be Inside Out 2. Now, I know some people might be wondering, well, what about Memoir of a Snail? Does that have a chance? No, not really. I mean, it's worth watching. It is still a very fascinating film, but let's just say it's very nice that it got a nomination. Congratulations to Adam Elliott and the animation team behind that film for getting that nomination. The chance of actually winning it, I'm sorry, but no. I don't see it. But yeah, honestly, I just wanted to go and express my thoughts, especially towards the animation categories. But I'm just going to go and say right now, if you have to make me sit down and I have to go and make a decision on which one I do believe is going to be the big winner, well, if I'm going to make that prediction, ooh, boy, that is a toughie. But I can imagine maybe, my gut feeling is going a little bit more towards Flo. I think we could see that major unexpected win, and the first time ever that an independent animated feature that is not from any of the major countries, not from the US, not from UK, and not from Japan, actually get that, it'll be a historical moment that it could go and get that win. I'm thinking Flo, honestly, my ranking of who would most likely get it would be Flo, The Wild Robot, Inside Out 2, Wallace and Gromit, and then Memoir of a Snail. So that would be my guess right there. All right. Oh, and by the way, one more thing I just want to go and state right now. Of course, I guess we will have to go and wait and see with what the actual results shall be, because it's going to be in about a month, I believe. Yes, it will be in a month that we will know who will be the big winner when the Oscars are going to be held on March 2nd. All right, so now with that said, I would like to pass this on to the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you think of this year's Oscar nominations? And it doesn't necessarily just have to be for Best Animated Feature. You could also expand your thoughts onto the other categories as well. Who do you want to see win Best Picture? Who do you think, what do you consider are your biggest surprises? What are your biggest snubs? And also, you know what? Let's go and make things interesting again. Allow me to go and make a poll, and I'm going to ask, who do you think will win this year? So I will go and write down Flow, and then Inside Out 2, and then Memoir of a Snail, Memoir of, okay, well, I don't have enough characters, so I'll just say Memoir of Snail, and then Wallace and Gromit, and then The Wild Robot. Oh, I can't wait to see what you guys have to say on this. All right, anyways, oh, schnut, my chat wall exploded. Anyways, let's see what we have here now. All right. Here are my thoughts on the nominations. First, everyone hopes that Emilia Perez will not win any awards because that movie didn't represent transgender people and Mexican culture well. That French director didn't do his research properly, and that shows why the movie got hatred by the audience. Second, I am sad that the Pakistani animated film The Glass Worker didn't get nominated for Best Animated Feature. At least the movie got submitted, which is huge for our country. You know, at least it had a shot. Let's see now. And I mean, even if it did get nominated, that doesn't mean the movie itself isn't worth watching, you know? At least getting any form of recognition, that is still quite a win right there. Let's see now. Can we give all of Emilia Perez's nominations to I Saw the TV Glow? Even if Carla Sofia Garzón didn't out herself as vile scum, it's objectively a much better movie. Anyways, I'm still rooting for Inside Out 2 to win for Best Animated Feature, but Wallace and Gromit Vengeance Most Foul winning would be a pleasant surprise. Just for Aardman getting their own vengeance for DreamWorks micromanaging them back into the 2000s. Oh, that actually would be a very interesting comeback. You know, that would be like an ultimate revenge right there. All right. Anyways, let's see here. So y'all know me, I'm Team Wild Robot all the way, but at the same time, this is a really strong lineup. Plus, with Flo's Globe win, it may be anyone's game. As for the rest of the nominations, it's cool to see more love for The Substance. Dune 2 getting into Best Picture was a surprise. Emilia Perez getting 13 nominations is a joke and does result in the worst song lineup in years. And I don't know who's this nominees to be determined guy, but he's making out like a bandit. Yeah, really, that John Doe boy, he's been getting a lot of nominations. Must be a fascinating filmmaker. No, but you know what? You do actually bring up another good point I almost forgot to mention. One thing that is actually great to see that got a lot of people excited is The Substance. It's very rare that we would see a legitimate horror movie become a competitor at the Oscars. And the fact that The Substance is able to go and emerge as one, that is honestly a big opportunity. And I feel honestly, a lot of people would be talking about Wicked and Emilia Perez and The Brutalist and stuff like that. But honestly, I feel like The Substance kind of came out as an underdog, and honestly, I want to see that win. I want to be rooting for The Substance. Now, the chances of that winning will be very low, but still, worth a shot. All right, let's see what else we got here. By the way, it looks like we did get some results from the poll that I did here on Twitch, and surprisingly, the majority of you who have voted, 59% say that it's The Wild Robot, which is then followed by a tie between Flo and Wallace and Gromit. And meanwhile, there is one who has voted for Inside Out 2. So interesting. Y'all believe that it's going to be The Wild Robot who's going to take the win. Interesting. All right. For the animation side of things, I'm happy to see The Wild Robot getting 3 nods, Flo for 2, and this year's animation category is not that bad. Who will win? I don't know. So congrats to the nominees this year. Speaking of award season, I'm attending the Annie Awards for the first time ever. I'm doing media, by the way. Ooh, awesome. Congrats. Anyways, Let's see, what else do we have here? Who else has an interesting comment? I'll be honest, the Oscars have lost my interest over the years, which made me just not bother half, if not most of the time. But this year, I might have to keep an eye on it, especially for Best Animated Film. I pretty much predicted it all too, so now I'm curious as to who's taking it home, which I'll be fine with any nominee taking it home. Exactly. Honestly, like, even though I'm predicting maybe Flo would win, I would be happy with any. Like, of course, my heart is set on Wallace and Gromit, but honestly, if it turns out that it's either The Wild Robot or Flo or even Inside Out 2, I would honestly be okay with it. The only one that I would say I'd have a bit of a problem would be Memoir of a Snail. I mean, like, yeah, it's good enough to get a nomination, but to get a win compared to those others, it's like, I don't know. Anyways, let's see what other comments are there just to double check. I was not expecting Flo to be in the international feature too, and The Wild Robot in Best Sound. Great recognition. I hope The Wild Robot and Chris Sanders win the Oscars. I have not seen Flo, but it will be nice to see it win though. Maybe there should be a Best Animated International Feature Film category. Also, how would you rank the films nominated for Best Animated Feature? To rank those, that is a good question. Actually, I don't think I could say just yet. Considering that I do have my top 5 best and worst animated films of 2024 coming out later this week, I'm going to save it for that. At least, like, I don't want to say it now because it will be spoilers for that right there. So just stay tuned for that. And yes, this is a confirmation that the video will be coming out this week. I know many of you have been waiting for a very long time for that, but I can confirm to you that it will be out soon. All right, I think I have time for one more comment to go and read. So let's see now. Okay. I'm definitely happy with the nominations. For me, I think either Flo or The Wild Robot could potentially win, and Inside Out 2 has a strong chance as well. As for the other nominations, I'm happy Wicked is a strong contender, and as for Emilia Perez, I haven't seen the movie myself, but considering all the controversy surrounding it, depending on what it wins, that's going to be a dumpster fire. Oh yeah, trust me. I think, like, even if it doesn't win Best Picture and it still gets other categories, like, it will bring up a lot of discussions. All right, so anyways, now that we are done with the Oscar talk, and we're going to be saving the rest of that for when the Oscars actually happen on May 2nd, it is now time we're going to go on to another break, and we're going to go into another story that we're going to catch up on, which is going to be a lawsuit. But unlike the last time, which was an absolute farce, this one, however, honestly is very intriguing to look into, especially when it comes to the streaming rights. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, so it looks like I may have to do a bit of clarifications. I think I might have mistaken and I said May 2nd instead of March 2nd for the Oscars. So just want to re-clarify that it will be on March 2nd that the Oscars are going to be happening. And I also did notice that some people have mentioned that apparently today, as I am recording this, it is Pixar's 39th anniversary, so happy birthday, Pixar, yay! But anyways, we are going on to our next story right now, and what we will be looking into will be another lawsuit. Now, the last time that we looked into a lawsuit, it was just an absolute joke. Like someone trying to sue Disney for $10 billion because the artists accused them of stealing his idea for Moana? Yeah, it ain't happening. Like, even the most cynical of Disney haters would look at this and go, yeah, no, this ain't it, Chief. That's not the way to go after Disney right there. It ain't gonna work, dude. So, yeah, like, that thing was just an absolute farce, like I said. But this lawsuit, on the other hand, this actually sounds intriguing. Now, by the way, I just want to make a big clarification. Now, what Paramount and the people at South Park, what they have done, these are all allegations. So don't take any of what I've said here as like a total fact, except for the parts that are actually factual. But when it comes to what Paramount has done, they're all allegations for now. So please keep that in mind. So with that said, let us now go and take a look at the South Park streaming lawsuit. Yes, apparently, Paramount has received a little bit of a blow when it comes to a lawsuit regarding the streaming rights of South Park, which is one of their, if not the biggest animated show that they have in their roster. Or at least, well, I mean, technically they do have SpongeBob as well. So at the very least, South Park is one of Paramount's biggest shows or biggest animated shows that they do have. But the point that I am trying to make is that apparently there is this lawsuit in regards to his streaming rights, and now a judge has ruled that instead of dismissing it like what Paramount demanded, it would officially go on trial. So just to go and read you from my source here on The Hollywood Reporter, it states right over here, after a pricey bidding war for new episodes of the massively popular show, Justice Margaret A. Chan of State Supreme Court in Manhattan said that Paramount may have actively convinced the joint venture it operates with the show's creators to breach its contract with Warner Brothers Discovery, which wasn't offered the opportunity to stream episodes labeled as specials that were considered outside the scope of the deal. Paramount may have unjustly benefited, Chan said in a ruling issued on Tuesday, by getting to carry the content and reap any advertisers, subscribers, and other profits resulting from streaming those episodes, all without going through the same bidding process as everyone else. Now, when I read this article, a lot of it is a lot of law discussions, and I will admit that I did get a little bit lost when trying to read that, and it was difficult to try to navigate like what's actually been going on. But then I read this Cracked article in which it discussed it more in simpler terms, in layman's terms, so that anyone, including myself, can actually go and understand. And what has been happening with this lawsuit and what Warner Brothers is accusing Paramount of doing, oh boy, it is fascinating to really look into. So what has happened, to go and like sum it up the best I can, you may recall back in 2019, Warner Brothers won an intense bidding war in order to go and get the streaming rights of South Park for $500 million. So $500 million in order to get the streaming rights of South Park, not just its entire collection, but also to get the new episodes for the next 5 years. And keep in mind that this was back in 2019. So this was just before the streaming wars officially began. And Warner Brothers was pretty much setting things up in order to go and build what would become HBO Max, or now it is known as just Max. And at the time as well, Paramount never really considered to make their own streaming service. They entered late in the game into the streaming wars with Paramount Plus. So at the time, they didn't necessarily think much about getting into the streaming wars and prepare their own streaming service. So by that point, eventually down the line in the future, when Paramount did eventually create Paramount Plus, and that they see that in HBO Max, they had all the episodes of South Park, including the new ones, well, allegedly they had a bit of buyer's remorse. And this is where Warner Brothers' accusations started to come in, where they said that allegedly Paramount teamed up with South Park Digital Studios and teamed up with the people in there like Trey Parker and Matt Stone to go and screw Warner Brothers over on the deal, so that Paramount could still find a way that in this age of streaming that they could still go and capitalize on South Park despite the deal that they would go and make. And the tactics that they have done, funny enough, well, they've been happening right in front of our faces. And the biggest culprit of that is in terms of the specials. And when I say the specials, I mean the ones that have exclusively premiered on Paramount Plus. So stuff like The End of Obesity, The Streaming Wars, Into the Panderverse, and stuff like that. So they have allegedly been tactics to try to screw over Warner Brothers, because that would be when Paramount would go and say like, oh, well, technically we're allowed to do that because in the deal that you paid $500 million for, it's only specifically for episodes. It doesn't necessarily mean anything in terms of specials. So since you don't have specials, we're going to go and take care of the specials. And on top of that, they also accused Paramount to coincide with the South Park people in order to go and make less episodes per season. That they would go and completely reduce the amount so that they would then go and put in a lot more of their energy onto the specials instead of the regular episodes. So, has there been anything else from this lawsuit? No, I don't think so, actually. I was thinking if maybe there could be a little bit more to it, but no. It's pretty much that, where apparently they screwed them over with having less episodes come out on the later seasons, and on top of that, putting in a lot more energy onto the specials, which is why they decided to go and make this lawsuit. And just saying right now, nothing is official as of yet. That doesn't necessarily mean that Warner Brothers won and Paramount lost. It's just that now the trial can actually go on to the next step where it can actually be taken in court. It's just that Paramount lost the dismissal case. It's not going to be dismissed. It will be moving forward. And I just got to say that even though that technically these are just allegations, they do sound very interesting. I feel like, honestly, there might be a little bit of weight to it, that maybe what Warner Brothers is saying, there might legitimately be some fact, especially when in regards to the specials themselves. I've already mentioned that, you know, it's kind of funny how, like, this is something that would be considered evidence that has been right in front of us this whole time. The fact that even though they have this deal, that they decided that they want to make their own specials for their own streaming service. That right there does seem a little bit suspicious now that you actually do think about it. And not to mention that along with these allegations, that they did state that they should put in more energy onto the specials instead of the shows. And that does, or not the shows, I mean the episodes. And that does make a little bit of sense. Because when you think about the times when the subject of South Park would suddenly be brought up again, when people got talking about South Park in these recent years, when you think about it, a lot of the, most of it, if not all of it, has nothing to do with any of the episodes themselves, but rather it's in regards to the specials. Those are what really got people talking, that really got people into discussing about South Park. And it's very rare to see people talking about what happened in the latest episode, but it was common that whenever they have a special, people would really gravitate and discuss about that. Like, I've seen a lot of talks where people would go and discuss about Into the Panderverse in regards to the end of obesity, in regards to streaming wars, and all that kind of stuff. But very rarely do you see people talking about what has happened in the latest episode. And then there is the allegation of the fact that they would go and make less episodes than usual for HBO. You know, so that they would go and screw them over with having far less episodes to go and produce that would ultimately be out on HBO Max or whatever. And if you will go and take a look into this right here. Now, I have the Wikipedia article of all the South Park episodes. Like, as you could see that for the longest time, they would be a bit consistent. You know, like you would see that for a while, on average, like from its premiere back in 1997 all the way down to 2012, that each season would have approximately 14 episodes. There were a few in the earlier days that they do a little bit more, like there were 17, like in season 3 and 4, but generally they would be 14 episodes. But then, going into the big bulk of the 2010s, you see that they would reduce that a little bit to just 10 episodes a season, which is not bad. So when Warner Brothers made that deal, they were hoping that, okay, so maybe for the upcoming seasons that we are going to have, we're going to go and have like 10 episodes, we're going to have 10 episodes a season to go and add to our streaming service. But this is not what happened, because then entering upon 2024, that's when things suddenly changed. Like, yeah, in season 23 during 2019, they did get 10 episodes, kind of like usual. But then in 2024, there were only 2 episodes that they released. Just 2. But then again, some people could argue, okay, well, I mean, that's easily explainable, though. This was back in 2020 and 2021. That was during the heat of the COVID pandemic. And that is very understandable, considering that, it was a very worrying time. People didn't really know what to do. And considering that South Park has a bit more of a unique production, more so than other animated shows, like, it's understandable why they would have to go and completely reduce it. So it's not necessarily because of anything that Warner Brothers would go and accuse Paramount over. So maybe on the next thing, maybe on the next seasons that they would do, they would go and, provide with more episodes. Okay, so, and at the time, like, not only, like, did they have to do just 2 episodes during 2020 and at the start of 2021, but then also there were 2 specials that did come out at the end of 2021. So, like, we go down, specifically, it's the post-COVID specials. All right, that makes sense. But then, let's go on to season 25, which came out in 2022. And now they decided to reduce it to just 6 episodes on that season. Now, this was at the time when the pandemic was becoming better, and that was when, like, we were getting more and more of the COVID vaccine, like, that was starting to become common. So not only, like, did we get just 6 episodes, but also, at the time, there were 2 specials that came out, specifically the Streaming Wars. Okay, maybe it'll get better in the next season. Nope, it's the same thing. We only got 6 episodes that came out in season 26 throughout the during early 2023. And on top of that, there were 3 specials that came out for Paramount Plus at the time, joining the Panderverse, Not Suitable for Children, and the End of Obesity for 2024. And honestly, that in that regards, like, I know there is a little bit of a discussion that, yes, the pandemic would come into play. That is easily understandable, especially back in 2020 and in 2021, that it made it so that it was very difficult to go and produce any newer episodes of South Park. I completely get that. But then, when you see how things were going a little bit afterwards, like, once things did get better from the pandemic and that they could go back into, like, producing regular episodes again, they did do a little bit less than usual with just 6 episodes a season instead of doing 10 episodes a season like before, which does prove a little bit of a point of what Warner Brothers is accusing them of. But then I realized there is something else. And this is something that I personally kind of discovered. And this is just my own personal theory. So take this with a grain of salt. But honestly, I do realize that there is one more move that they might have done in order to ultimately screw over Warner Brothers. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind that when it comes to the contract that Warner Brothers has received, it was only good for 5 years. That they were able to hold on to the streaming rights of South Park with all the episodes, including the new ones, for 5 years, from 2019 all the way up to 2024. Now, you may have noticed that during 2024, last year, South Park did not release a single new episode. The only thing that they brought out was the End of Obesity that came out on Paramount Plus. Now, Trey Parker and Matt Stone did state before that the reason why they didn't do an episode is because they didn't want to go into some of the bigger topics that were happening during that year. Specifically, they want to avoid making a parody of Donald Trump and avoid discussing about the 2024 US elections, fearing that maybe their influence would be considered an interference and that would cause like that whole can of worms to just come out and put them into really big trouble. Like they didn't want to go into that. However, my theory is that if what Warner Brothers is saying is true, then that is just a diversion. That was nothing but an excuse to make it look like it's reasonable to not have any South Park episodes in 2024. And yet, what a coincidence that it happened on the last year of Warner Brothers' contract for the streaming rights, in which now the contract is officially over. The South Park episodes will be getting out of Max, and soon they will get back into the hands of Paramount. And what a coincidence where later on, Paramount can have this great opportunity to make this big deal to go and say, hey, look, everyone, Paramount Plus is now the official new streaming home of South Park. No, it's not just the specials anymore, but all the episodes are here. And to celebrate this occasion, we're also going to go and bring in some new episodes. Yes, South Park is now fully back, baby. Now, again, I just want to clarify, this is just a theory, but I feel like it honestly really lines up with everything that Warner Brothers has been accusing. Which honestly, this is why I feel like this lawsuit is just very fascinating. That I feel like if what Warner Brothers is saying is true, that this is an ultimate case of Paramount of being absolutely sour and just very bitter of the fact that they had to do that bidding war in the first place for other studios to go and actually get that right instead of claiming it for themselves. That they, and especially with the fact that Paramount Plus has been considered to be a massive failure down to the point that it really crippled Paramount altogether, down to the point they have to sell themselves now to Skydance. Like, honestly, it feels like it is very intriguing, and I think we might have to keep an eye out to see how this trial will unfurl and how it will ultimately end. And this is not even to mention that, considering that now, speaking of which, Paramount will soon be under new management and will later be run by David Ellison. And how is he going to be managed this? Like, is he going to go and continue to fight in this lawsuit? Or is he ultimately going to go and settle with Warner Brothers on this entire thing? That I don't know, but honestly, it feels very interesting with how things are going to go. And it really does highlight how the whole deal with the South Park streaming rights has really been messy. This is like a point in South Park's history that is worth really looking into and seeing how it is like a great example of massive corporate mismanagement and how it caused a lot of fights. So this is one that I feel like really is worth discussing and worth really looking into, especially when it is discussing about one of the biggest animated shows in history and how things can really go wrong in terms of its life on streaming. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go onto the chat wall, and I'd like to ask you all, what do you all think about this lawsuit that is now going on to trial? Do you think Warner Brothers actually has a point with what they're talking about? Do you think you're going to side more with Paramount and they feel like they did nothing wrong on this, that it's okay to actually do those specials on Paramount Plus? I would like to know what you all think on this. All right, so, let's see now. I was never a fan of South Park because its reported crude humor, despite it being satire, but oh boy, what a mess. I don't know why the lawsuit will continue to go forward, but we will have to wait and see what goes on. I have two questions to ask you. One, South Park itself would even make fun of this lawsuit because the show is intended to make everyone, to make fun of everyone and everything. Two, how many episodes should there be for a TV season, live action or animated? Honestly, I will say for your first question, that is intriguing. Honestly, the thing is that this is something that I don't know if they would actually get into, considering that it's making fun of their bosses. And I'm not saying that South Park has never made fun of Paramount before, but I don't know. I feel like this might be a case where, like, maybe they would have to be, like, if they would do an episode on this entire trial, which I wouldn't be surprised, I think it's going to be a case where South Park would have to be a little bit more careful in order to take that approach, not to fully upset their bosses. Maybe even more so than what they allege with like bailing out on the U.S. elections and making a parody of Donald Trump and stuff like that. And as for the second one, I think honestly it was a case that Warner Brothers was expecting that there would be like, a consistent schedule, that there would be like 10 episodes a season, but they ended up only getting a handful. I think in total, they, like, ever since the whole deal, if we do count season 23, they ended up getting, let's see, 12, 18, 24 episodes. So that's just under half of what they would expect. All right, let's see what other comments would we have here. Personally, I don't really watch South Park, but this is definitely interesting. This whole deal with Paramount and Warner Brothers is definitely a big mess, and honestly, I do think if Paramount does get their hands on the entirety of South Park, it will benefit Paramount Plus in the long run. On top of that, I'm sure Skydance deal could impact. Also, in terms of any Trump parodies in South Park, SNL has that covered. Well, yeah, but then again, SNL being SNL, it's like, if SNL does it, that doesn't mean others can do it, especially maybe others can do it better. So I'm just saying. Let's see, what else do we have here? All I could say about this trial is that it seems to look very legit. For one hand, yes, Warner's did get the rights to use South Park with the entire series and new episodes aired after Comedy Central. But I do think that Paramount should have seen this a mile away when they decided to do the specials. These specials are taking away regular episodes away, and also we have 0 episodes in 2024, but we only had one special, and that South Park game. Oh, and also Casa Bonita reopening. That's all we got. Yeah, that is true. That is true. You also got Casita Bonita. Like, that was also a big thing. Like, another very prominent project that Trey Parker and Matt Stone worked on. That is, you do have a good point there. Let's see now. Usually, I wouldn't be into South Park. I mean, no surprise for someone who doesn't watch adult shows. But even then, I wouldn't watch it for its crude humor, and the animation gives me the creeps. That and the controversies they make kind of speak for itself. Impressive soundtrack, though. However, this story is more interesting than the show itself. Since Paramount's future is still in debate, if the studio may or may not be in good hands as we speak, so who knows where this lawsuit is going to lead to. Exactly, man. Like, even if you don't care about South Park, it is still very intriguing to see how major studios are trying to handle a major franchise like South Park. All right, so I don't really see a whole lot of other comments, so I think I'll read this one and then we're going to go on to our next break. I do have a question about this. Since South Park is literally owned by Viacom and Paramount, how is it possible to have the contract with HBO and Warner Brothers? Does Warner Brothers partially own South Park as well? No, it's like I actually said back in the beginning. Back in 2019, Paramount put up a big a big auction for the streaming rights of South Park. Like, this was before they even considered to really get into the streaming wars themselves. So that's why, the streaming war, that auction, like, it happened, it got intense, and it ultimately was Warner Brothers who won that by paying $500 million. So that's why this lawsuit ended up happening in the first place, is because Warner Brothers feel like they got screwed over from that contract that they paid $500 million for. So I just want to make that big clarification. All right, so now, with all that said, we're going to go on to our next break, and when we do come back, we're going to go into this discussion that it came from an article, a fascinating article that discusses about a prominent figure in animation, But there was one little thing that he said that really opens up a far bigger discussion in regards to movie theaters and streaming. So stay tuned for that. All right, now moving forward to our next story, we're going to be looking into an article, an interview article that discusses about a very prominent and well-known figure in the world of animation. But it's not necessarily the interview itself that we're going to look into. It's specifically the one little thing that he said that really sparked a massive discussion that people have in terms of streaming and movie theaters. So with that said, let's go ahead and look into this interview with Pete Docter. Yes, just in time for award season, IndieWire created this interview with the chief creative officer of Pixar Animation Studios, Pete Docter, pretty much discussing everything in his career and also some of the creative things that have been going on in Pixar. So Pete would go and discuss about his early days with the rise of Pixar and working under Steve Jobs and John Lasseter. Then there was the moment when John Lasseter got fired because of the sexual misconducts that he has done over the years, which immediately puts him as the chief creative officer. Then there was the big challenge of, settling into his new job. And then, of course, there was the pandemic. And then it goes all the way down to the release of Inside Out 2, now becoming the new biggest animated feature of all time. But I just want to go and state right now, by the way, if you have not read this article, I highly recommend that you do so. This is actually very fascinating. And again, it doesn't just look into Pete Docter's career, but also some of the creative process going on within Pixar, discussing about the challenges nowadays of creating highly anticipated sequels to their beloved franchises, as well as the challenges with creating original animated movies nowadays. But what I want to focus on specifically is actually this one little excerpt, this one little thing that he has stated, which is right over here, in which the interviewer asks, there was a lot at stake with Inside Out 2 because you had a couple of movies that didn't work as well as most Pixar films. Was it a hangover from the damage that was done during the pandemic? And I'm not going to read all of it, but Pete replied with, we had Soul, Turning Red, and Luca out just on Disney+. Very few people talk about Soul because it didn't have a big theatrical impact. There's something indisputable about that. And that's what many people have discussed about. That's the big thing that a lot of people really went into. It's not necessarily any of the other things that Pete Docter discussed. It's not about what happened afterwards with Pixar having a hard time getting back into theaters, like with the financial failure of Lightyear and also the bad opening of Elemental. But it's specifically how Soul is not as popular as the other Pixar films, mainly because of the fact that it came out on Disney Plus instead of having a prominent theatrical release. And I just want to go and state this right now. If you guys know me, then you know that I love Soul. As much as I really enjoyed the recent Pixar films, I feel like Soul was the last Pixar movie so far that came out as a true masterpiece. That it came out absolutely beautiful, thought-provoking, and extremely well made. I'd even consider it a top contender as one of, if not the best animated feature of this decade so far. But with that said, even though there's been a lot of discussions in regards to Disney's now infamous move of taking those Pixar films and just releasing them exclusively onto Disney Plus instead of just waiting for them to come out in theaters, similarly to what Illumination has done, where they waited during the entire pandemic until it was the right time to go and release Minions: The Rise of Gru. Now, a lot of people have said many things about it, how it was a bad decision, how it negatively impacted both Disney and Pixar. But this is an aspect that not many people have looked into, and that it does bring up a very good point, that this is an additional negative impact of the fact that because it only came out on streaming, you don't see many people discuss about Soul as much as many of the other Pixar movies nowadays. You don't see Soul being discussed as much as something like Coco or the Inside Out movies or even the Toy Story films or anything like that. That it missed that theatrical impact to truly make a true meaning to people. And I will say that I personally had that experience. Like, I actually witnessed that firsthand. Like, when Soul first came out during the pandemic, I already loved it. But last year, I did take that opportunity to also see that on the big screen, because Disney at the time, they were doing like limited theatrical releases for those three movies, for Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, to have a chance to show them on the big screen. And like, it barely got any attention. But when I went to go and see Soul, oh yeah, it left a much bigger impact on me. Like it honestly felt a little bit like a life-changing experience. Like, that was when the message that Soul wanted to come across, like, it really hit so hard when I went to see that on the big screen. It's something that honestly I never got when I watched it on Disney Plus at home. And it really highlights such a massive picture where it describes how the movie theater experience is objectively better than watching anything at home. And this is more true than ever in this day and age. And I know it is bold to go and use the word objectively in this case, but I feel like it is actually true, and I can explain why. Because in this day and age, nowadays, like, we consume media on a regular basis, more so than we ever had in the past. And that is mainly because we would go and consume media, like watching entertainment on our screen, now in like a variety of different ways, but the experience itself is all the same. Rather it be watching a movie or watching a TV show or even watching a video on YouTube, or even right now, if you are watching this, like, rather it be on on a live stream or even like watching it later on YouTube, it's all the exact same experience. At the end of the day, entertainment is entertainment, regardless of where you would go and consume it. And that's why watching a YouTube, watching like a video essay on YouTube that's like an hour and a half long, it's not really that different compared to if you would go and watch a movie on the television. You're pretty much doing the same thing, where you're staring at a screen and you're watching some form of entertainment, regardless of what the entertainment itself it might be. So even if you do watch a movie on your television, like, no matter how great it can be, you're still at home and you're still watching it. Now, when you look into the movie theaters, on the other hand, it is a completely different experience, because it forces you to be more invested. Because during that whole process of watching a movie on the big screen, you go through this entire journey in order to go and make to go and accomplish that mission. And the reason why I say that it is objectively better is because with movie theaters, you have to get out of the house. Like, honestly, even if you go and build your own movie theater at home, it's not going to be the same experience, because it is still at home. With movie theaters, on the other hand, you literally have to get out of the house. You literally have to really go out of your way in order to go and accomplish a simple task like watching a movie. And some people would even bring up, well, technically, going to the movie theaters nowadays is kind of expensive. Like, you got to spend a lot of money just to have that experience of watching a movie. Exactly. And that brings up another factor as to why movie theaters is actually a stronger experience, because it makes you more invested. Not only are you going out of your way for the main mission to go and watch a movie, you literally just put in an investment that you put in your time and money to be out of the house, to go and pay the people to get a ticket in order to see a movie. And because of that time and investment that you have spent, it makes you a lot more invested into whatever you're going to go and watch, thus making the impact far stronger than you can ever have when watching at home, regardless if you're watching a movie that was already released in theaters or if you're watching a movie on streaming. So, and this is not even to mention, by the way, that if you do, for movies that do get released in theaters, they actually get one very strong benefit of having their relevancy last much longer than a film that would come out directly onto streaming. And that is because of the re-releases, that it has several opportunities to actually become popular again. Because there's that first shot where it would be out on the big screen, and then later it would then be released onto digital, and then it would be released on physical media, and then it would be released onto streaming. And then, as an added bonus, if lucky, it would get a chance to get bonus relevancy for like a couple of months if it does get a nomination during award season, thus bringing back the talks where people would go and discuss about that movie again. When a movie comes out directly onto streaming, it's got nowhere else to go. It's got nowhere else to go and navigate after its release in order to maintain its relevancy. At the most, it can only be lucky if it gets nominated during award season. Like if it could get that nomination for like Best Picture or especially for Best Animated Feature, that would be its only chance. And then that's it. People would then go and quickly move on. And that is why that no matter what the movie may be, it will always leave a stronger impact than a film on streaming. I would even say that a bad movie released in theaters will be more impactful and will have more relevancy than a good movie that is released onto streaming. In fact, we have actually seen this firsthand in the past few years, where we have seen some amazing movies actually be released on streaming. Like they would be considered masterpieces, but they would easily get overshadowed by other great movies that have been released in theaters. This is exactly why we have seen back in 2023, Across the Spider-Verse become far more popular than Nimona. And even the year prior, this is why we have seen Puss in Boots: The Last Wish become way more popular than Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. It's because the impact that people had when watching those films on Netflix, regardless of how amazing they can be, they're not as strong as if they would go and watch it on the big screen. Because again, they only saw Nimona and Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio at home instead of watching it on the big screen. Now, I know some people might say like, oh, but I watched it on the big screen. Yes, there are like those exceptions, there are times when like Netflix and sometimes they would release their movies on the big screen, but how many people would have done that? Like how many people have seen either Nimona or Pinocchio on the big screen compared to how many people have seen Spider-Verse or Puss in Boots on the big screen? That's the major thing right there. And to go back into the discussion about Soul, Soul didn't really go anywhere in terms of having its relevancy make a true impact, even if it turned out to be quite a masterpiece. It's the fact that it came out on streaming and it just didn't really have anywhere to go, with the exception of maybe going on to streaming. Or like maybe there was the award season where it did get a lot of those best animated feature wins, and that was pretty much it. And I know, by the way, some people will say that there are some exceptions, and that's true, but those are extremely rare. Like the most that I could honestly think of is one being Encanto. And I know some people will say that, well, technically Encanto was released in theaters. Yes, but it didn't really get the popularity that we know today until it was released on Disney Plus. So technically there was Encanto. And you could say some of the other movies that were released like mainly on Disney Plus, they also got some popularity, such as Turning Red or Raya and the Last Dragon. And like a major reason for that is because of like Disney's unique brand of marketing, where they would go and keep making them popular, rather it be through like the Disney parks, through merchandise, through Disney Lorcana, and all that kind of stuff. Like Disney has kind of like their own brand. They got their own brand where they know how to make their animated films like highly relevant even after so many years. But then when it comes to like all the other streaming movies, yeah, it doesn't matter like how beloved they can be. Like their relevancy, like they always come and go so quick. Like even if they end up becoming like one of the most streamed movies at the time, like Leo, then immediately afterwards, nobody really talks about it. Like, do you see people nowadays talk about things like, do they still talk about movies like Leo or Nimona? Or especially, I will even say that this is why I personally feel that when studios attach themselves to streaming services like Netflix, they're kind of screwing themselves over in the long run, because it makes it impossible for them to go and actually build a franchise in order to go and sustain themselves. That's why, honestly, I feel like it's very concerning to see Sony Pictures Animation become so dependent on Netflix. You know, that they did the same things that Pixar did, that Disney did to Pixar, that got them immense backlash. And yet they have doubled down and are still doing so to this day. And as consequence, like, even though some of their movies got high praise when they came out, like, you don't really see many people discuss about them anymore. Nowadays, do you see many people talk about movies such as The Mitchells versus the Machines, or Vivo, or Wish Dragon? I'll even add that I feel like the same fate is going to occur when they're going to bring out that K-pop Demon Hunter movie. Like, I know there could be a good chance that movie could turn out to be amazing, and it would get its relevancy back again during award season and stuff like that. But honestly, I feel like when that movie will come out, people will be talking about it a lot for like a month, and then they're going to immediately move on to the next thing, because it doesn't have anywhere to go in order to go and maintain its relevancy. So this is why, overall, I just wanted to go and bring up this massive discussion in regards to the experience with movie theaters and with streaming. And Soul is unfortunately a victim of not being popular in the long run because of the fact that it got released exclusively on streaming. And that honestly sucks. As someone who loves Soul, who considers it as one of my favorite Pixar movies and even one of the best Pixar movies, it's unfortunate that it met that fate. And it really highlights one of the big problems when it comes to streaming services, and when you would go and release a movie there, because like, movies released onto streaming and stuff like that, they happen so commonly. And the fact that you can mainly and only experience that at home, it takes away a lot of the impact and a lot of the relevancy that it could go and make onto people. So I feel like, honestly, it's a very fascinating discussion to really go into, to really discuss about why movie theater experiences are better than streaming experiences. So just thought I would go and quickly bring that up. All right, so with that said, now I would like to go into the chat wall, and now it's your turn to express your thoughts on this. How do you feel about the fate of Soul's popularity, and overall, like, what are your thoughts about the movie theater experience compared to streaming experiences? I would love to know your thoughts on that. All right, so let's see. I honestly feel really mad I had to watch Soul on streaming and not get that great theater experience, because that movie, specifically its main themes, really helped me during a pretty hard time in my life in the pandemic. I've started seeing movies in theaters a lot more because honestly, I'm personally cutting studios some slack because the pandemic really heavily affected how we consume our media, but it's also manipulated a lot of studios' minds and they sort of become too dependent on streaming. Yeah, and I'll even say, like, I know, like, I made a bold statement to say, like, Soul changed my life, but when I went to watch that in theaters, like, it was also a moment where, like, I really needed that impact. I really needed that experience and its message, like, to really go and, like, you know, reflect upon my own life and stuff like that. Like, it was like, honestly, Soul had that limited release in theaters in a moment when I honestly needed it. So that's why I just said that's why I just wanted to clarify that it was a bit of a life-changing experience. Anyways, I absolutely love Soul. It's easily in my top 10 favorite Pixar movies. However, it's kind of unfortunate that people don't talk about it as much. Nowadays, I absolutely agree that watching a movie in theaters is an experience and be blown away by certain movie moments in movies. And honestly, while at the time I understand they put their movies on Disney Plus because of the pandemic, nowadays I think that maybe it wasn't such a good idea. And again, it's not just Disney and Pixar that got screwed over. You got to consider that this was also something that is not just that it's screwed over, but it's still kind of screwing over Sony Pictures Animation in the long run. I mean, some people could say that there are other studios as well that are doing the same thing, like Skydance Animation, but nowadays, honestly, based on the movies that they brought out so far, I have no sympathy for Skydance Animation. And hopefully with the new with the fact that now Skydance is owning Paramount, that, you can pretty much let that go. Focus on the SpongeBobs and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You don't need Lasseter when you got SpongeBob. I'm just saying. All right. I feel like streaming might have a little disadvantage for these movies, but I am glad that later on these releases came. These releases came on Blu-ray and in theaters, so these movies are able to get some traction. And thank goodness that people have been talking about these movies for better or for worse. My aunt thinks that Turning Red teaches kids to talk back to their parents. I highly doubt Pixar would ever fall off, as most people say, but even then, they make great stuff at the end. They can never really apparently the comment just stops there. But yeah, I mean, you got to keep in mind, the internet being the internet, they love to blow things out of the proportion. And when they do see something that, seems a little less good than what it used to be, they would go and immediately say, like, oh my God, they fell off. The whole studio's gonna shut down soon. This is the worst thing I've ever seen in my life because it's not as good as the last thing I saw or the things that I remember back when I was a kid. So honestly, you gotta take what you see on social media with a grain of salt, because people who are really stuck on social media, like as they say, terminally online people, they love to exaggerate their claims. Anyways, I gotta say, buddy, you are 100% spot on with what you said with theaters. 100%. I think watching films in theaters is the best experience because it enhances it to a new level. I won't lie, I do like streaming, but I do collect DVDs from thrift stores from time to time, since not everything will be on streaming, or they could potentially be removed at some point. Exactly. And, and I just wanted to go and say that, and this is also part of the reason why I love collecting DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4Ks. It's mainly because, you never know when they're going to keep stuff on streaming, or they're just going to go and get it out in general. At least I have the ability to watch it whenever I want without having the dependency of streaming service holding on to that collection in particular. Not to mention that it's one of the ways to watch some very rare movies. Like, if I want to go see Son of the White Mare, I ain't gonna go and find it on freaking Netflix or Disney Plus or whatever. All right, anyways, let's see. As someone who loved Raya and the Last Dragon, and I am still bitter to this day that its popularity was handicapped thanks to being released on streaming. I can say that Pete Docter is right. I know the theaters are dying in the age of streaming is a popular narrative, one that I even once subscribed to, but movies need both in order to have longevity, both in terms of popularity and financially as well. That is a very good point, dude. You bring up a very nice point. And yeah, honestly, it's kind of like as you probably know, I actually really like Raya and the Last Dragon as well. But I never actually got the experience to watch that on the big screen. I mean, I was lucky to see Encanto on the big screen, but Raya was never released on the big screen in Canada, and that was because of how Cineplex felt very bitter at Disney at the time, especially with that whole thing of like, oh, have some premium access. All right, I think I'm going to read one more comment before we go on to our final break. I'll go over here. I agree, Matt. Watching movies at home is not the same experience as watching it on the big screen. When I was young, when I first saw an animated movie on VHS or DVD, I know the quality and the picture is very different, but when I look online and that it came out on the first, I was like, wow, I didn't know it was like the exact same experience differently. Even the classic movies during the golden age of cinema air on TV, still not the same impact on the big screen. Okay, you know what? I still got time. There are a few people who do bring up their opinion. This time I'll read one more. All right. To quote about them having Soul, Turning Red, and Luca out just on Disney Plus, and a few people talking about them because of their theatrical impact now kind of makes sense because the streaming stuff might have worked better in theaters instead of streaming. Exactly, man. It's like I said, a bad movie released in theaters will make much more of an impact and will be more relevant than a good movie released on streaming. All right, so with that said, we got one more break. And before we say goodbye to this episode, we are going to say goodbye to a video game that was once considered very ambitious, but now it has to go and take the L. So stay tuned for that. And now, everyone, it is time that we will go and end this episode off with the grand finale. And I might as well go and use that little jingle to discuss what we will be talking about, considering that we are going to be discussing about a Smash Bros. Style video game. One that in the past, a few years ago, there was a lot of hype, a lot of anticipation, hoping that maybe this could turn out to be the next epic fighting game, the one that people are really going to go and get into. But over time, it proved to not actually be true, and now it is at the point where ultimately, it looks like Warner Brothers is going to be taking the L on this one. And I am talking, of course, about MultiVersus. So as you probably know, MultiVersus is Warner Brothers' Super Smash Bros. Fighting game featuring a variety of different Warner Brothers IPs, ranging from the Looney Tunes, DC, Game of Thrones, Cartoon Network, some of their classic cartoons outside of the Looney Tunes, like Tom and Jerry, and Hanna-Barbera, of course, like Scooby-Doo, and even some other movies as well, like they would throw in Beetlejuice, Gremlins, The Iron Giant, and many, many more onto this entire game. Like I said before, this is pretty much if you take Super Smash Bros., but instead of Nintendo IPs, you got Warner Brothers IPs. But unfortunately, it looks like now the game is going to be shutting down, or at least its live service shall be shutting down. So just to go and read you here from my source on Polygon, it states here now, MultiVersus will remain playable offline, the publisher said, both locally and against AI opponents. The game will no longer be available to download as of May 30th at 9 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time. Warner Brothers Games has already ended real money transactions from the game, meaning players can no longer purchase the premium currency Gleamium. Now, they did state, however, that coming soon, or by the time that you're listening or watching this, they have already begun season 5, in which that is going to be the final season, and it will go on up until May 30th. And during that time, they will be releasing 2 new characters at the same time, which they include DC's Aquaman and Lola Bunny. We also got a quote I just want to read directly from Warner Brothers Games themselves, in which it stated here, "We want to thank every player and person who has ever played or supported MultiVersus. All of us on the Player First Games and Warner Brothers Games teams have poured our hearts and soul into the game. We will be forever grateful for the incredible support of the MultiVersus community through this journey." Now, I just want to go and make this statement right now that, to be very honest, I myself have not played MultiVersus, so I cannot necessarily go and comment on the quality of the game itself. I cannot really comment how the game plays or anything like that, so just want to let you know that this is going to be coming from an outsider's perspective. But even if I've never played the games, you could tell how the management of MultiVersus was just godforsaken awful. So to go and quickly summarize the whole history of what's been going on, the game first came out around the summer of 2022, and a lot of people had great anticipation for it. Like, a lot of people were expecting that this could legit be a competitor in terms of its popularity against Super Smash Bros. That people will no longer play Super Smash Bros. And they'll play something like MultiVersus. In fact, it actually gained the nickname, the Smash Bros. Killer, which, like, I'll be honest, even back then, I thought it was such a stupid name. You know, it's kind of like the equivalent of calling Skydance Animation the Disney Destroyer, which now we have proven that is completely untrue. So yeah, honestly, it was kind of dumb to call it the Smash Bros. Killer, but whatever. But the point is that there was a lot of hype that was going on with this game. Many people were very much excited to go and play MultiVersus. And when the open data came out, it did gather a little bit of an audience. Like, a lot of people were enthusiastically playing the game, but not necessarily a whole lot, especially when the game is not necessarily, the game in itself is not necessarily that great. You know, like, there were a few things that they had to go and fix up. There were some obvious bugs, there were some obvious glitches, and there were some obvious problems that prevented it from being a great game. Fans of it would consider it to be good, but not necessarily all that great. Which is why Warner Brothers decided to step in and say, okay, you know what? We do have some issues, so how about we're going to go and try to fix it? We're going to go and put it offline for a while, and then when it comes back, it will be stronger than ever. So they pretty much pulled the game out for an entire year, you know, trying to do their best behind the scenes to go and fix all the problems and all that kind of stuff. But then suddenly, it finally did come back with a new season, with new characters and all that kind of stuff. And weirdly enough, it came out even worse. Yeah, it was pretty bad. It was kind of like you ended up getting this really awesome Bugs Bunny figure, but you have a little bit of complaints because when you got it out of the box, you noticed that the condition wasn't all that good and there were a few pieces that were broken. So you asked Warner Brothers that you want to go and send it back, and they would come in and give you like a fresh new one that will be better than ever. But then by the time you got it back, you check out the figure, it's even more busted than ever. And those broken pieces, now they've been turned into powder. Like, it's at the point where, like, now it's like not fully unplayable, but it got near that. Like, it went from a good game that has some problems to a full-on bad game that wasn't really fun to play, at least according to the fans. And from there, like the fan base just slowly but surely diminished from there, that a lot more people were just abandoning the game. Like, it didn't have that big of an audience in the first place, but because of the big delay that they did, and then suddenly they brought it back worse than ever, it detracted more and more people, down to the point that maintaining it is just not as serviceable as ever, which is why they ultimately decided to go and pull the plug. And I think, honestly, a major problem when it comes to MultiVersus, I wouldn't necessarily, again, I can't necessarily criticize the game itself, but I don't really think it's really because of the game itself. I think really what killed MultiVersus is the management. The fact that Warner Brothers was trying their best to make it not necessarily as a legitimate fighting game, but as a live service game. That Warner Brothers really wants to jump in on the whole trend of live service games, that they were hoping that with MultiVersus, maybe they could have their own Fortnite and have something popular that can really rank in on the big bucks, that people will be spending money again and again and again in order to get new characters, to get new costumes, to get new features onto the game, that they could keep on making money in the long run with MultiVersus. But at the end of the day, it just doesn't necessarily work. And this is not even to mention that this whole format of live service games, like, there was a time that it did get popular and some games turned out to be massive hits because of it, such as Fortnite and Fall Guys. But in the long run, with the large quantity of these live service games, people just didn't really want it anymore. And I think what really sent a message that right now we are seeing the big downfall of live service games is because of Sony. Just recently, we have seen them have a critical hit. Like, they took like one of the biggest L's in gaming history. Like, they had one of the biggest disasters in video game history with Concord, a game that they spent hundreds of millions of dollars on, hoping that it's going to be the next big live service game. But in literally just a few weeks, like, I would say somewhere between like 2 weeks or just under a month, not only did they completely shut down Concord, but they also had to completely shut down the studio that created Concord. It was that big of a disaster. And that L was just so big that in order to make room for it, they had to cancel many other live service games, many of which were attached to big name franchises like God of War. And I think they canceled like 8 or 9 of them. So I think it is safe to say that Sony lost hundreds of millions of dollars, if not maybe somewhere closer to like $1 billion that they have lost on that. And that has ultimately sent a massive message that live service games are no longer feasible, or at least making more live service games are no longer feasible. And with Warner Brothers, they saw that it wasn't really working out, especially with their mismanagement, with the way that, you know, the way that they try to handle things, that it didn't come out perfect, but then the popularity, like the momentum that MultiVersus had before, like, they put that to a grinding halt by putting that on hiatus for about a year. And then when it returned at that time and came out worse than ever, it just completely ruined it. Like, it pretty much made audiences just bail out on that game altogether because it wasn't fun anymore. It was, it wasn't as fast paced. It wasn't as fun. It doesn't handle as well as it used to be, even if beforehand it was considered to be flawed. And at that point, it just ultimately turned MultiVersus into a tragic story. I mean, yes, like, this could debatably be Warner Brothers' biggest failures in terms of video games. And by the way, I almost forgot to mention that this doesn't even count like some of the controversies that happened behind the scenes. Like, allegedly, I heard that there were some backlash with not towards the people who were making the game, but they were giving backlash to Warner Brothers because during one of the earlier seasons, Warner Brothers was, of course, demanding for 3 characters to appear in a season that came from Harry Potter, because, of course, one of Warner Brothers' biggest franchises is Harry Potter. But of course, considering the controversy surrounding not just the franchise, but also its creator, J.K. Rowling, how she became this delusional nut job that supports the genocide of trans people and other marginalized groups, the people who were making the MultiVersus game, they weren't having it. And a lot of the staff decided to go and ultimately quit. So there was already a lot of trouble that was happening behind the scenes, and also in terms of the management that was going on from Warner Brothers Games, which ultimately just results in this to become this massive failure. And it really is a shame as well, because it was a game that many gamers and that many fans saw had a lot of great potential, that it was an opportunity for them to go and actually expand the concept of Super Smash Bros., but with a variety of different Warner Brothers characters, with Bugs Bunny or Tom and Jerry or Steven Universe or Finn and Jake or Superman or Iron Giant and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, yeah, it has been explored with other properties before, like even Paramount had made their own like Smash Killers style game with Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl. And that's another one that, like, it is kind of on the same boat as MultiVersus. It's like kind of flawed. It's definitely not as good as it's subpar compared to Super Smash Bros. But still, though, as a game in itself, like, some people still love playing it. Like, it still has a prominent fan base. It still has a prominent fan base of its own that people still love playing it. And if MultiVersus if MultiVersus started by taking the same track as Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, it would have gone into a much better direction. It would have had a much better reputation, and it would have given an opportunity for the people that made MultiVersus to go and actually make sequels. That, like, ultimately, it's not necessarily like I said before, it's not necessarily the problems with the game itself that is the real issue. It's the fact that Warner Brothers tried to push to make it a live service game. That is the thing that ultimately killed it right there. And now, honestly, I don't know what's going to be the future in terms of these live service games. Maybe we're going to hear more and more that they're going to ultimately stop doing it altogether. Like, honestly, one that I'm going to say that I'm surprised that it's still going and that, you know, it still seems to still have traction is the Disney racing game, Disney Speedstorm. Like, that is another one that is a live service game, and yet, like, Disney is still going with it. Like, I don't know if it is actually considered very successful. I don't really see many people talking about it. The only things that I've seen that gets mentioned is whenever they would have like a new racer in there, rather it be like Moana or Kermit and Miss Piggy or Figment or any like random character that they would go and include in the race. Like, somehow that still seems to be going. I don't know, like, how popular that seems to be, or some people are even mentioning Disney Dreamlight Valley as well, which I believe that's like Disney's version of Animal Crossing. But still, though, like, maybe Disney has a better idea of what to do when it comes to these live service games more so than Warner Brothers. But still, though, it is kind of an unfortunate example of how live service games are not as financially feasible as what companies think, and it results in them having like a critical blow where they would lose hundreds of millions of dollars. And unfortunately, MultiVersus seems to be a victim of that. You know, a game that a lot of people saw great potential on, but ultimately it did not meet them. And now the only way that you can really play it is just through online. So anyways, that's just my little piece on MultiVersus. And now I would like to go and pass this on to the chat wall. And I'd like to ask you all, what do you think about the end of MultiVersus? And especially if you have played MultiVersus, I would love to know your thoughts on that. You would definitely be more informative on that than I would. All right, so let's see what we have right over here. I have played MultiVersus since it was in beta phase, and the game was an okay alternative to Smash Bros, but what we got, it was fun playing as Arya Stark, the Iron Giant, and the almighty Shaggy. It's an absolute shame that it's about to be gone and being wasted by the live service dumpster fire. I'll stick with story mode games. So excited for Grand Theft Auto 6 though. Yeah, whenever that will come out. All right, let's see here. I personally never played MultiVersus myself. While it had potential, it really did end up as a disaster. Because of the live service feature, it pretty much met the same fate as stuff like Square Enix's Avengers, Crash Team Rumble, and especially Concord, where the live service feature completely screwed it over. Honestly, if you want an example of a fighting game that features popular and recognizable characters, take a look at Marvel Rivals. Oh yeah, that's already the next big thing right now with Marvel Rivals. Again, probably another example of how Disney probably has a bit more of an understanding of these live service games. I mean, if Speedstorm and Dreamlight Valley is still going and able to last longer than MultiVersus, they must be doing something right. Let's see what else we have here. Typical. Warner Brothers was sitting on a gold mine with MultiVersus, and they blew up that gold mine because they didn't like that it was full of shiny yellow rocks. When PlayStation All-Star Battle Royale is more successful than you know you failed. All we could do now is wait for Game Mill to add insult to injury by putting out Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 3. Or maybe they can make Paramount All-Star Brawl that has South Park characters in it as a massive middle finger to Warner Brothers. Now, honestly, if you want to know a real middle finger, it wouldn't be from Nickelodeon or Paramount. It would be Disney. Because I'm saying right now, I know there are people out there waiting for the day that Disney would come out with a Smash Bros. Style game. I mean, with the roster of all the animated characters that they have, that has true potential. I know, I've heard in the past that they considered doing that at one point, but they bailed out on it ultimately. And Square Enix has offered to do like a Kingdom Hearts style fighting game, but Disney said no on that as well. But seriously though, like that, I feel like is an idea that Disney is sitting on a gold mine where honestly, it's like, I don't know what you're waiting for, Disney. Like, make that legit happen. I can assure you, there are people who would love a Smash Bros. Style fighting game. So I just want to go and make that statement. I don't know if Disney will actually hear me on that, but, I'm just saying, I definitely would buy that. Just, all I ask is just don't make it a live service game, okay? Just do like what Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl or what Smash Bros. Does. Release it onto consoles or on PC. Don't do the live service thing. You could do DLCs, but don't do the live service thing. I'm just saying. Do that, and we'll be cool. All right, let's see what else. Dang, no wonder why I stopped playing the game around late summer 2022. Good thing I didn't play it again after hearing the whole mess with the game and mismanagement. If there's one thing I would give the game credit, at least it lasted longer than Concord. But still, I feel very bad for the developers of the game dealing with Warner Brothers giving them mismanagement. All right, let's see what else we have here. I think the issue is that it ain't just the notion of the game just being a gas. It's the monetization being terrible. Also, people just don't have the time or commitment to play lots of gas games, which is why I feel investing in such would be a terrible idea in the long run. Yeah, no, I completely understand what you mean right there. Let's see what else we have here. While I never really played MultiVersus, but now it's gone, as always, Warner Brothers mismanages everything, and this is nothing new when a game that has Nickelodeon is doing better than you somehow, then you have issues. As for me, I am waiting for Grand Theft Auto 6. Love is a long road, and ready to get back to Los Santos. Man, I understand. All right, so I think with that said, that should go. And, oh, by the way, before I want to ask Strider. By the way, when you say gas, like, just want to know what you mean specifically. I just want to know, like, what do you mean by gas? GAAS? Just want to have like a bit of a clarification on what you mean by that. Just want to be sure like we could be on the same page. Like, because like when you're saying it was like, oh, the game is just being a gas. So all right, hold on, we'll see if oh, games as a service. Okay, thank you. Okay, so live service games. Okay, now I completely got you. All right, so anyways, with that said, that should do it for today's episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast. Hey, thank you so much for joining me on this. This turned out to be such a wonderful episode. And also tune in for next week, considering that we do have the Super Bowl. You know what that means. We're going to be watching a whole lot of trailers for next week. So, by the way, I just want to go and mention that if you guys have enjoyed this episode of AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast, then please consider to go and subscribe to the AniMat Live Twitch channel and the AniMat's Crazy Cartoon Cast YouTube channel. You could also go and follow me on whatever podcast service you're listening to if you are listening to this, whether it be on Spotify, Amazon, Apple, and many, many more. Now, with all that said and done, I'd like to say thank you all so much for listening. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, see you later, dudes.